Hi, everyone. I guess I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Mike Potter. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at QLIK. I'm responsible for basically all the product creation, R&D, design, research, as well as managing and running our SaaS offerings, which includes obviously the IT organization, the data office, as well as cloud operations. QLIK has a vision. Our vision is around creating a data literate world, a world in which everyone has access to data and analytics so that they can improve their decision making and really solve the world's most challenging problems. We provide a true notion of an end-to-end platform that includes data integration and data analytics that is available both on premise and in the cloud, and it's designed to really help you close those gaps between your data, insights, and subsequent action. And so we like to call this transforming data into active intelligence so that businesses can make better decisions, improve revenue and profitability, and really optimize customer relationships. The landscape has changed a lot over the past 11 years. And one thing we're really proud of is QLIK has been a member of the QLIK Magic Quadrant in the Analytics and BI platform report from Gartner year after year. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Tech Association of Georgia for creating this summit, this technology summit. I think it's a really great opportunity to really hear from leaders around cloud, AI, digital acceleration, and machine learning. I suggest you listen for some key themes, being able to how to leverage your investments in the cloud, AI and ML, being able to strike a balance between technology and the business needs to help fuel this idea of data-driven decision-making to help grow your business. And then finally, we'll take an opportunity to geek out and talk about tech stacks, talk about partnerships, talk about some ideas of where we're going. So at this point, I'd like to throw it over to Gary Brantley, our moderator, CTO of Beazer Homes.
Thanks. And that was great, Mike. Thanks for opening up. My name is Gary Brantley, and I'm currently the Chief Technology Officer for Beazer Homes, but I'm also an active member with the TAG organization, and I also am a part of the board of directors. So I'm extremely excited to get this kicked off and extremely excited to be moderating a panel that will bring such great insight. We're going to talk about the next big thing. And before we get started, I introduce myself a little bit, but we'll start with one of our panelists and allow her to introduce herself, and that's Miriam, and then followed by Miriam, we'll go to Andra.
Great, Gary, thank you. So my name's Miriam McLemore. I'm an enterprise strategist and evangelist with Amazon Web Services, kind of an interesting group. Prior to joining AWS, I was the corporate CIO at the Coca-Cola company. I was with Coca-Cola for many, many years, 26 in all. Native to Atlanta, and have had the great opportunity to be involved with TAG over the years and many of the technology associations across Georgia. So thrilled to be here and be able to participate in the panel and speak from both an AWS. I've now been with AWS almost 4 years, but also Coca-Cola as well, if it's helpful.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you. Andra.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. I'm Andra Milender, and I am a CTO at Equifax. I'm responsible for our US business line. So all the technology that runs and operates our US practice is in my portfolio. A recent hire to Equifax, so long time in Atlanta. I think I'm going on 13 years now, but recent to Equifax, and I've loved every minute of it. Just like Miriam, right? Share experiences from all the other prior opportunities. I spent 11 years at Global Payments and have done some stints in the startup industry as well. So hopefully, our experiences collectively will help everybody kind of understand the future, or at least plant some seeds on ideas that our audience can take advantage of. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And now I know it's not Andra. You told me that before. It's Andra. and I promise you I will not mess that up again.
No
All right,
worries.
so we're gonna have a lot of fun here kicking this off. I've also been a CIO for several years. I was just recently, up until October, the CIO for the city of Atlanta. So a lot of things have been going on, a lot of shifts have been going on. And so we want to really talk about what the next big thing is here. So we'll start with you, Mike. How has technology changed in the past few years, right? What do you predict will happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, well, that's a very open question, but the thing that strikes me the most about, in particular, last year being a very precedent-setting year in a lot of different ways is what we've observed is this acceleration of strategy within a lot of organizations, both in terms of moving to the cloud, moving to SaaS. Realizing that as many workforces have had to work from home and go remote, they've had to find new ways to service them. And so there's been a lot of acceleration in cloud-based solutions for a lot more organizations that historically, were content to stay within their own infrastructure systems. And so we've seen a real explosion there. And I think the other area that has really taken off is just the ubiquity of data. I was struck watching data evolve over the past year, whether it be on CNN or watching governance use data, to make critical decisions, particularly around the pandemic. And so the role of that data in the past year has been absolutely, in my mind, pivotal in terms of how we've progressed. As we move forward, I think that what we're going to start seeing more and more is how data is going to be, integrated into our lives to a level that we can only imagine today. I think that a lot of times when we look at the use of data within organizations, it's often held by the privileged few. But now it needs to be integrated in every job at every role. Everyone needs to have access to that data. They need a level of data literacy in which they can use that data effectively in their jobs. And more importantly, they need to be able to use that data in a positive data culture that allows them to not see it as a weapon so much as a tool that actually helps inform a decision-making process. One of the biggest concerns I saw in 2020 was the misuse of data in that regard, the politicization of it, the misinterpretation of it. And I think that as we move forward, we have to take a next step.
That's outstanding. And I think, you covered a lot in that. You said a lot. We could spend the entire panel talking about everything that you just talked about. But Miriam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary, Mike. Absolutely. The insights that you shared are the things I'm seeing. The role that I have at AWS, I get to speak to C-suite leaders in companies all over the world in their journey to transforming their organizations, creating speed and agility, leveraging cloud, obviously being part of AWS. And, it's interesting when I joined 4 years ago, the conversation is, should we use cloud? How will we use cloud? And no one asked that question anymore. And regardless of where, because, different parts of the world are in different places as far as adoption of technology, right? Asia's, at a different speed than Europe, than North America, than Latin America. My last trip prior to COVID, I was in the Middle East. And so, but it's fascinating. The pandemic, with all the horrible results of this pandemic from a technology standpoint, certainly has created a need for speed, right? And a need for agility, and the need to think differently about how you work with your employees, right? How are we bringing people back to work? What's virtual, right? Here we are virtual, look like? Are we going to be a hybrid work environment? What does that look like? What about conferences and things? I was on with the Singapore government last week, right? And I'm virtual, and there's some people in the room, and so how are we going to do that in our future, and the power that technology, positive use of technology, Mike so rightly said, provides to companies to create different experiences for consumers. I was talking to a healthcare company in Europe about virtual house calls, right? And some of the work we've done with them to create that experience where people can't get into their health provider's office and get the counsel that they need, right? How do you do that where privacy and all of the right things are addressed? So it is fascinating, the shift from, 4 years ago, should we go to cloud, to, right, how do we get to cloud really quickly? And what are some of the things that we can do to enable our business to get the business outcomes it needs, and our employees to work in an environment where they feel safe and comfortable and productive, importantly productive.
Got it, and that's great. And I know, Andra, just in case anyone loses connections, I want to make sure that I repeat the question so that everybody is informed, and that's including our audience as well. So I want to repeat this question for you because I absolutely want to hear what you have to say, Andra. And so one of the question we're talking about is, how was technology changed in the past? How has it changed in the past few years? And what do you predict will happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Hopefully that won't happen again, but I can't predict the internet access here. I think, my colleagues hit on the main themes by far, working for a data company, right? We really are in the heart of what we do, a data company, and doing so in a manner in which we've been transforming at lightning speed to the cloud. Miriam, to your point, is it a question of do we, or how fast do we, right? And it really is about how fast do we. We've done breakneck speeds to take our technology cloud native, not just a lift and shift model. And I think, from a technology perspective, just the availability of capability has, just leaps and bounds accelerated in the last few years. At Global Payments, we introduced cloud many years ago. I would say it took a while to get traction. They're now really amping that opportunity, and I'm super excited for my ex-colleagues there in leadership. But in that journey, we noticed quite a bit of difference between capabilities available in a public cloud when we started to now, right? It's really hard to say you can't find something that you can leverage that's available either via SaaS or an IaaS or a PaaS model, and get your work done more quickly, right? Bring business value more quickly. I was amazed at reading articles, and I'm sure everybody's read these, especially in the healthcare industry, and how fast they've accelerated tech leverage there. And we might talk about that later, but it was, to me, it just indicates there's so much opportunity that maybe some industries haven't quite tapped into, haven't quite made the adjustment, or think there might be a regulatory obligation that doesn't allow them to leverage some of the best tech that's been evolving over the last few years. I think going forward, I thought about this question a lot, to be honest, over the last couple of days, Gary. And to me, it's just leveraging the power of everything that's out there right now, be it quantum computing, VR, AI, right? Obviously, cloud. I think, to some degree, blockchain. I often say that's a solution looking for a problem versus the other way around, depending on what industry you're in. But a lot of the other technology is, it's taking it, adopting it, and then doubling down. I think a lot of stuff is sitting out there untapped and unused in a lot of businesses. I know in ours alone, we're constantly looking at opportunities to leverage AI more prevalently than we do today, and just being able to take advantage of that.
What's so interesting about this question is that if we would have asked this question 3 years ago about what we would expect and what we actually went through last year, I guarantee you the majority of the answers would not have been a pandemic would be a part of what has changed how we operate, and quite honestly, how we work. In my organization, our initiative is called How We Work. And I know for a fact we would not be looking at the dynamics of how we work. So I think a lot of how we advance in technology and what's going to happen next is really going to be tied to what happens in our daily general lives. It could be a crisis that changes it. It could be anything. And so you all have provided, outstanding your input on this question. And so I want to go to the next question because it takes us in, it kind of leads right into what you all were just talking about. And so we are all in different industries, right? Which makes this panel really diverse and dynamic, right? So my question is, and we'll start with Miriam, what is the biggest challenge in your respective industry at the moment?
Yeah, so I'll start with AWS, and then I can give you a little my thoughts on Coke from a CPG, because what I get to do is talk obviously to a lot of CPG companies around the world. But from an AWS standpoint, the biggest conversation that I have with C-suite executives is no longer about the technology and does the technology work. It's about the culture of the organization, and is the culture and the organization really ready to leverage technology in a way that it's designed to work. There's this habit particularly I deal with lots of large multinationals, to lock down data. Mike was talking about the importance of data, right? And we're still, from a governance model and an approach, still locking data into isolated areas. And it's this need to know mindset, and granted, security absolutely critical in the world of leveraging the power of some of these technologies, but you also have to get out of your way and get out of your employees' way to innovate. And that's the other struggle. People ask me often, right, how do we create empowered teams? The executive leadership team is saying, we've got to innovate, we've got to stay current, we've got to be digital native, cloud native. But the middle management often is not ready to empower the employee base to make independent decisions. And the fact is, speed matters. In today's world, you can't make, we or at least I grew up in a world of waterfall and these methodologies where you put out a project plan for the next 5 years, we're going to adopt this new technology. You can't do that, right? The technology has changed completely, right? Think back 5 years, or try to think forward 5. It's challenging. So you've got to get where your team is in a mindset of technology has, I come from CPG, a shelf life. It ain't going to last for the next 20. You don't put something in and run it for 20 years anymore, right? So that goes to your data center. You don't go buy boxes and stick them in a data center and wait through a 5-year depreciation cycle, because the technology's changed too much, right? To live in that world. And so I do think the biggest challenge from a cloud adoption is organization and cultural challenge in the companies that I work with. And CPG, from the conversations that I have, right, this shift from, you think about a Coca-Cola, the big events, the sporting venues, the concerts, right, where you sold all this product that aren't happening or haven't been happening. And so that need to shift to new delivery models, new customer experiences. How do you get the product in the hands of the people that need it? So, getting supply chains right, getting e-commerce right, getting online ordering and delivery right, working with different partners all over the world. Just that uptick, and we talked about it before, the move from brick and mortar to digital commerce, but wow, did the pandemic make everybody that hadn't thought about that, right, go figure it out a lot faster. That was kind of many companies, a small little group over here was thinking e-commerce and digital, that switched. So that's, at least from some of the conversations that I have, certainly the focus.
Let's hear from you. That's great insight, Miriam. Let's hear a little bit from you, Mike, on that. Let me repeat the question again. What is the biggest challenge in your respective industry at the moment?
Well, I really liked what Miriam said about the change management problem. Technology is typically not the blocker; it's people. a big thing we've been advocating is this idea of data literacy within organizations, being able to get data to people so they can have access to it, so they can understand it, so they can use it and even argue with it, if you will, in a very constructive way. And the challenge we have is that there's this generation gap from a data perspective. The people who are most enabled in data in their daily lives are typically sitting in the wrong parts of the org chart. They're usually the more the millennials, the Gen Ys, the younger folks, and the people who have all control over the data are the ones who are sort of holding the reins tight, because they come from a different world, a world in which data is used in a different way. And I think that change management problem, I think, is absolutely key in terms of them being able to take the next step. And I think the technology side of it is really just the enabler, right? So a lot of times what you'll see is the technology will race ahead of the organization. How many times have we built something that isn't getting used? And why isn't it getting used? Because that people problem hasn't been solved. And I think that, I gave an example with data. You could use the same example with cloud. You could use the same example with leveraging AI and machine learning techniques in terms of their role in problem solving. And from my point of view, it's getting over the people barriers that I think is the real breakthrough that we need to have.
Got it. Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. Andra, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things, and not to be repetitive, because I think Miriam and Mike covered quite a bit of challenges that we've seen. But I have to say, I walked into an organization that's advanced past the hang up on sharing data. In our industry, our biggest issue is making sure we don't overshare data, because we're compliant, right, to all the rules, regulations, and privacy laws that we have to adhere to in the way we use data for credit management and identity management. But the concept of centralizing that data and making it as powerful and leverageable as possible by the organization is a quest that Equifax started a little over 2 years ago, and we're there. Right, we've laid the foundation. Yours truly still has, quite a bit of data to get into that kind of overall consortium, but we're there as at the use it. Everybody should have access. Let's go. Now we've got to focus on how do we make sure we put the swim lanes in place so that we stay compliant. We know what the rules are, right? But there's a lot more complexity in implementing that than meets the eye. So I think that's our challenge, along with, back to the people problem. Miriam, you hit it spot on, right? Is sometimes the technology's there, the capabilities enabled, and not just I've got to let go, but how do I think differently? So to me, it's a mindset shift on not just the skills and the tools, but the thinking piece of it, and getting all of us collectively, be it you sit in tech or you sit in the business, you sit in product, wherever your role is, to think about how do you innovate differently now that you have these tools and capabilities, right? Again, we talked about cloud is evolutionary, but just having this data hub that everybody can take advantage of. Stop doing what we've been doing, or stop using all the same processes to get there, because chances are we're limiting ourselves. And I said the last piece is just really retaining talent, because everybody has decided, hey, cloud's a cool thing, let's go. We've spent 2 years incubating some really amazing software engineers, and they're hot on the market, and we know it, right? So our biggest challenge is going to be making sure we retain those minds and our data specialists to other companies who are now just kind of evolving there, and needing that talent off, out of the gate.
That's so interesting. I mean, goodness, you guys have given us a whole lot to think about. And, I just think about, not to tackle the technology portion, but just, the basics. How do we balance both coming to work effectively and, coming back and easing back into our everyday lives that we once knew, because we won't completely go back to what our new world reality is, and how do you start to sustain an organization that creates a culture like that, right? I started during the pandemic. I've met everybody over Zoom. It's really kind of hard to continue to try to sustain a culture, because we've been sustaining cultures based off of in-person involvement, most companies. And so now, how do you sustain the type of culture that creates the work environment that you want, when you have this hybrid approach? Some people hate it going to work every day or wasn't their preference. And, you know, a lot of people don't like sitting at home all day. Some people that thought having a job at home all day, every day, now has kind of changed that tune. So it's funny to see how when we get a dose of something, right, that we kind of say, too much of that may not be may not be good. So I know right now we're trying to balance that as we move forward. And so we'll go on to this next question. They kind of wrap around each other, but we'll start with you this time, Andra. And so the question is, what are the most critical changes that we must make to face the future that we're going into effectively? Like, what do we need to change to hit what's going forward from, you know, for our future?
Yeah, I would say if I had to narrow it down to one thing, it would really be to unlock the speed at which we innovate and deliver. You know, we're not putting technology in place just because it's cool, right? We're not doing it because we know it's more secure. Those are all, you know, intangibles that have to be there and kind of self-starters, but it's really about how quickly can we deliver new capability or enhanced capability for our business to thrive, and figuring out how we do that. Like I said, you know, been on this journey for a while in a couple organizations, and that's where the rubber meets the road and often where we stall out. So to me, the biggest thing we're facing is both culturally and just business process wise and capability. We could use the words like agile all day long, but the reality is that doesn't necessarily, you know, speed up delivery if we don't find ways where we can reinvent work to make that happen. And you said it very well, Gary, you know, with the pandemic being the driver, right? People have had to learn to work differently. Yes, we too are going to have the same challenges with return to office, as we're calling it, our RTO model. But we're being very thoughtful around the fact that, to your point, right, once you get a taste of something, you don't want to let go, with a flexible work model and schedules and all that fun stuff, but not lose what's core to our culture when it comes to collaboration. I started a job in the middle of the pandemic, interviewed over video, just like probably 90% of the people on the call listening in. And it didn't, at that point, didn't feel abnormal because we'd been doing it for a few months, right? It seemed very natural. So I think we should harness what we've learned over the last few months and then figure out how to take that to, delivering with speed. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can say their productivity numbers are up, ours are too. I think what we'll find, though, is if we don't strike the balance between in-person and remote work, there's going to be a residual effect 5, 6, 10 years out of that lack of collaboration that's going to really, I think, stall innovation, right? Not because there's not cool tech, but then how do you take advantage of that and grow your business?
Got it. Yep. Good points. Mike, do you want to, piggyback on that really quickly?
Well, first of all, I think that was really well said. The only thing I think I would add is I think a critical part of a lot of strategy needs to be to recognize the fact that we're much more adaptable now than we've demonstrated adaptability over the past year. And I think that a lot of strategies don't factor in adaptability when it comes to how people work, their ways of working, the technology we use, the processes we follow. And I think that the forcing function of the pandemic forced us to adapt, and we demonstrated that we could. And I think we have an opportunity to leverage that moving forward, right? And just remind ourselves, hey, do you remember what we did last year? Well, we can do this now. And I think that when it comes to a cloud strategy, comes to a data strategy, comes to trying to change a process, trying to change how an organization works together, I think that we can really leverage that as a motivator to affect change. And I think that what we'll see now is an opportunity for a lot more change to happen because people know they can do it.
Yep, I agree. Miriam, any thoughts?
Yeah, just one thing to add. This is mostly a technology audience that we have in Technology Association of Georgia. And I think we need to be conscious of the fact that our lines of business also now have and need technology skills, right? the people they're hiring are now digital natives. I have 3 kids that are headed into the workforce, right, or in the workforce, and they grew up digitally native. The pandemic has made even some of our leaders who were not all that technically savvy, much more technically savvy, because they've had to operate in this environment that we're operating in. And we're not going to go backwards. And data, as Mike and Andra rightly said, right, is so important. Those leaders are figuring out how to do business with data to drive outcomes. And so as IT professionals, working with your lines of business in them having the right technology skills in their organizations going forward that you still partner with, it's not shadow IT. They've got to be able to use data to drive the supply chain, use, technologies that were previously the purview of IT. We've got to, be teaching people to fish, right? We can't hold it all within IT and tell them, don't worry about it, I'll figure it out, which, sometimes IT can think that way, and those days are gone.
Yep, I agree. They sure are. And so we have 2 questions left, right? And we have just a few minutes left. But I want to get your take on this next question, all 3 of you all. And so we'll start with Mike. We'll start with you first this time. Who is making the greatest advancements in tech? And by that, can you also add, what are they doing? Just briefly, like who do you think, and let me repeat the question again, who is making the greatest advancements in tech and what are they doing?
Well, it's such a broad question. I mean, I've been absolutely amazed by the progress we've made with, vaccine production, right? From, zero to result. I think that from our perspective, the companies that are making the biggest advancements are really focused around being able to integrate a complicated workforce in hybrid environments, both at home and remote, or in the office, being able to integrate them from a standpoint of within their corporate data strategy and cloud strategy, but also from a standpoint of being able to assist them with being able to take information and translate it into action, right? And I think that the companies that I think have really responded well in the past year are companies like Amazon, Netflix, Zoom. What they've done is they've learned how to pivot their business models. They've learned how to pivot their technology strategies to adapt. And I think to me they're the ones that have impressed me the most.
Good. I was hoping that you weren't going to say Blockbuster, but and so I'm glad you you did not. That's just a joke. Well, what are your thoughts, Andra?
I'd have to say, hands down, just thinking about this one as well, healthcare. The amazing transition they've made from your kind of original go to the doctor, do your thing, to telemedicine, to really doc in the box, full body scans, kind of walk up to a kiosk and get some health readings, to mobile health, health wearables. Everybody usually, I don't have mine on today, but has on your watch that's telling you your heartbeat and your stress level and all this fun stuff, or where you are in your sugar levels. And frankly, as Mike had mentioned, the insurmountable amount of work that went in the speed of light to develop a vaccine. Now, we all know the vaccine was under, research and development, from the SARS world. But the point being, they really harnessed, I think, the power of the technologies out there. And back to our original question at the top of the hour was, what are companies doing to leverage tech and where it's going to take them? It's really taking advantage of what's out there. They've also leveraged AI and prosthetic development and advancements, right? So I've been very impressed just reading and watching the healthcare industry and how much advantage they're taking of the technology available and moving the needle.
Well, what about you, Miriam?
It's a tough question. I love both Mike and Andra's answers, and what I love about being part of Amazon is we work with customers, and our focus is to start with customer problems first. And it's so true, the things that people have invented right? So I think it's us, it's we the people, right, who are making the greatest advancements because we're thinking, right? We've been stuck all over the world in this crazy, who would have ever predicted environment, and the innovation coming out of people and the willingness to collaborate across geographies on problem solving and addressing what nobody could predict, I think, is that willingness of people to operate differently, whether that's in healthcare, as Andra rightly said, to promote, I mean, the collaboration across countries on this vaccine development has been fascinating. The data sharing that people are breaking down walls and figuring out how to do. And that's what I hope we sustain, right? Is we are in a global pandemic. It's not a US pandemic. It's not a, right, one island got a pandemic. Everybody all over the world trying to figure this thing out. And I hope that's a uniting thing. I've seen some great examples of, let's figure this out together, keep my business afloat together. So, it does to me charge my faith in what people can figure out and how fast we can pivot. If we, back to our earlier conversation, let ourselves get out of our own way sometimes, right? And don't try to go back to our, the old way of working. Let's embrace, we live in a global world where, what I do affects what you do. So I hope there's a lot of learning that we sustain.
and I agree with every one of you all. From a different angle, one of the things that I've seen, and I think this is going to be advantageous for all of us in all of our industries, is our government institutions are waking up, and they're seeing that they can move a lot quicker and faster than they were moving before. And quite honestly, I was a part of it, and we were forced to. And some things that would have taken years to do. I know, politically, there's all type of different dynamics, and there's no way that there would have ever been virtual city council meetings and the concepts of digital city halls and how can we push technology and data a lot faster out to our constituents. And I think the health crisis that we're in is helping to facilitate that. I think they're seeing that, hey, residents, the people that we support on a day-to-day basis want information that we have, and how can we put it in their hands, and how can we speed up? I remember before this happened, right when this started, just the shortage of technology for those that were underserved, and how people start really honing in on it even more. I mean, there was a certain group of it, but man, you couldn't educate, you couldn't do anything. And so I think that's a really important thought and theme. And so I just wanted to add to that. But I have one question you guys can get left. You can give quick answers to this, and this is like for you to just think, kind of out the box, right? So really quick, and we'll start with you, Andra. What is the most interesting trend for 2021-22?
I'm going to go with artificial intelligence proliferation and new use cases across industries to leverage AI.
Yep, I would agree. I know I'm not going to get any wrong answers here, because we just got the smartest panel that's been a part of this whole tag kind of cohort. So we'll go next to Mike, and Mike, I have to go to you next because we have to save a lady for the last insight on this, right? So Mike, what is the most interesting trend for 2021-22?
Well, I have to admit I'm inspired by Miriam's answer to the previous question. I think it's the fact that we're learning how to work together more effectively and break down barriers. So I would argue it's tech partnerships, whether it be, AWS, Google, Snowflake, SAP, the ability of IT organizations and businesses to work together more effectively. I think that what's really going to start to happen is you're going to start to see solution-oriented approaches to things that cross organizational boundaries, cross company boundaries, cross governmental boundaries. And I think I can only hope that that continues, because I think that's pretty exciting.
That's awesome, and we'll save this last answer for Miriam.
Yeah, Gary, I was inspired by your response. I think the ability to educate, right? We have learned, right, access to education. When people are in different circumstances all over the world, and can we make, and we've proven we can, make education accessible globally, right? Regardless if you're in some small village somewhere, right? We can start to figure that out. And that, there's been and a lot of it, I think the barrier is in our head, right? Well, I don't have all the connectivity I need or all the tools I need, but people got super creative when kids had to go home and learn at home. And I'm not advocating all kids stay at home and learn at home, because there's lots of challenges. I was very glad my kids were up and out of that time period, because wow, what a challenging thing to work at home and try to also educate kids in your home. But that flexibility of how we work and how we educate, right, and how we empower parents to solve those problems, I think, whether it's health crisis or whatever it is, that's, creating a learning gap for a child or an adult, we can now solve a lot more of that.
Well, let's just say there was a lot more appreciation for teachers over the
last.
There's a lot more appreciation. and I'll end by saying this, right? I'm hoping that, and this is for me and Mike only, that there's some advancement with this hair, so naturally, Mike, you and I can grow a hair full of hair as time starts to continue on.
Seems like they should be able to solve that.
I'm not so sure I want more hair. I've been told I was better bald than hair. I got to somehow fix the sheen problem.
Yeah, that would be correct. But it's been an absolute pleasure to just be a part of this with you all. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to really talk about and lend your knowledge to the association, the Georgia Technology Summit. We're thankful. I know Larry Williams, the CEO, and the board of directors are extremely thankful for the amount of time that you've taken to really give back. And Mike, thank you for your sponsorship and for your investment, into this organization and into the community. And with that, I'll say thank you, and please enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.